Good evening and welcome to Mindful Life 276. I am your host Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is the 24th of August. Yeah, we were well progressing along this month, and it is Thursday, and on Thursday we do the Thursday talks. No direct topic necessarily, but whatever the questions or comments or topics are raised inside of the chat, that's what we're discussing. Even if you had info, it would be unwise to mention. Well, of course. Michelle says, joke for the day, homeless man chopped by man attempting to rob him. I am confused by this, please. Not only you, ma'am, not only you. I saw that, and I also saw another homeless man. Apparently he was killed, he was shot or something like that. I don't know what's going on totally there, but some of these stories, sometimes the news doesn't necessarily have all of the details 100%, and I sometimes it's like I assume it's something like that, why some of these stories sound the way they sound, because some of them do sound like they're beyond believing, they're beyond belief. So yeah, what's on your minds today, folks? What are we mindful of? I don't know what's going on the whole. Yeah, the place is a bit drastic. The crime situation does get scary, and I saw we were talking. Did I read the article where the estate police association head was saying that, right? We did talk about that. He was talking about that they want automatic weapons. They want some automatic weapons to defend themselves, and that's what they think may be the solution. And I saw a businessman come out today and say, no. Let's not have an arms race going on between the bandits and the security officers, because eventually where is this all going to end? And I could understand his point too. Like, automatic weapons for security guards in Trinidad and Tobago, that sounds like a scary situation. A very, very scary situations. Black Range Rover incident. Oh yes, I saw that. And I saw the guy inside of the Black Range Rover apologized. And many people were insulting him over the apology. Like, honestly though. Why would you insult him for the apology? Like, would you prefer he didn't apologize? Like, I'm not saying that the police don't have a job to do and etc, but like, I won't insult his apology though. Like, good, apologize. Thanks for that. I guess it's on the woman how much of that she accepts and all of that, but I don't know. I think it's because it may be insane, but that's just the thing with apologies. There isn't really a way to be sure about that. You just figure it might be. And in the case there, the reality is, and I know some people may not like this kind of thing, but the reality is, we did see an incident that was halfway going on already. The man is alleging that the woman tried to bounce him, that she was following him, etc. He was alleging that in the video before he knew people were recording him. Those were allegations he was making. So we don't actually know everything of the situation. You heard him mouthing off. You saw him physically assault the woman. Not the most brutal of assaults, but it was an assault, apparently. That's all we saw. We don't know what was before. We're not sure what happened after. We're not sure what the 5 years before may have been. We are not sure. We really are not. And you have to be careful how the assumptions go from there. What's going on, Ronnie?
Hello. You heard me, right?
Yeah, Michelle, I agree. I'm by no means defending the man, but yes, I'm hearing you, by the way, Ronnie. I'm hearing you. there's I remember a statistic that I read on domestic violence and domestic issues are ticklish issues to talk about, because sometimes when you're trying to be balanced, it could seem sometimes like you're talking on the other side, and you don't want it to seem like you're endorsing any kind of abuse or putting people in dangerous situations or anything like that. But the reality is, if you read the literature on domestic abuse, the vast majority of abusive situations go both ways. And the iffy part about that statistic is, in domestic abuse situations that go one way, where only one partner is abusing, women more often do it. But swiftly to counter with that, there is a strength and aggression imbalance. Well, we're talking physical abuse, Michelle. We're talking physical abuse here because it's very difficult to calculate emotional abuse and those other kind of abuses. It's more difficult to put a clear finger on that, but it's much more easy to tell when somebody hit you or if somebody hit you. That's a much more easy one to tell. I'm not discounting the others. I'm just using this as the one because it's easier to tell. But there is a strength imbalance there and an aggression imbalance. So like something I notice when I look sometimes, the internet is full with all kind of fight clips and etc. When a fight clip pops up sometime, and you see sometimes a boy and a teenage boy and a teenage girl going at it in a fight, and sometimes the teenage girl is bigger than the boy, but nearly all the time the boy wins, because one of the things that many girls may not understand about males is they are more aggressive generally, by far. So and more decisive. That's why it could sound sexist, but it's just difference between humans, between the sexes in humans. Men are generally more decisive. That's why if a man is attempting to harm himself, he generally does it straight out. And because of that aggression, in aggressive situations between males and females, very often the male is dominant. Because of the aggression and because of the strength. The strength comes on top of the aggression, but the male is generally more aggressive too. The male is generally more risk-oriented, while women are more risk-averse. So, for example, if you look at skateboarding and you look at skateboarding records, men are the ones who have 4 spins. Yes, testosterone is part of the reason for that. 4 spins they make in the air before the first woman made 1.5 spin. And it's not really about strength, but a man is the only one crazy enough to go up there and actually try to spin 4 times. Many men probably broken many bones trying to do it. Women are like, I'm not going to do that kind of folly. Speaking about that, something that, we're just going as we talk in here. Something that I remember, the Peter Pan story. They remade Peter Pan recently, and they put a bunch of girls inside of the Lost Boys because, apparently it was too sexist for the boys alone to be lost. Not understanding that they actually brought girls into an insult by doing that, because they don't seem to understand the original story. The original story told you why the Lost Boys were Lost Boys. Because they fell out of their prams, and girls were far too clever to do something so stupid. The story said it. The reason Lost Boys were only boys is because it was an insult to boys in a way. And, really and truly, you could understand that boys, I might not say stupid, I mightn't say that the girls are necessarily more clever, but the boys are willing to risk more. Anyone who has been around young children and are willing to admit that there are differences between the sexes, boys do the most sometimes. Regularly, so it's no surprise. And then to think they remake this story thinking they're making it better, we're empowering women, putting the girls in the insulting position. Now it's like, jeez. It's true, boys, parents would attest to this. Yes. What's going on, Rome?
Good.
What's up? What's the latest?
I just chilling tonight before I get to the conversation.
Nice, man.
I have a very particular opinion on this whole domestic abuse thing. It has something to do, one, They are beta, they are alphas, and they are omegas.
Oh my gosh. God.
And when you, as a woman, you go in a relationship with an alpha man, there are certain things that are required.
What about the Sigma?
The Sigma is the alright guy, but so you have to know the type of person that you go in a relationship with, and it is symbolized by all the adornment, right? And don't let that adornment capture you, and then you go into that situation and behave in a particular type of manner and do expect a particular type of response, because success in life require a certain level of aggression and a certain level of psychopathicness that people have in their genes. And if you look at research and who are the successful people, they are the people who are very high in the psychopathic genes.
That's true. That's true. I believe CEOs of Fortune 500 companies are some of the categories where you find the most psychopaths, and you could understand that because very often to make it far ahead in most businesses would require kind of ruthlessness very often. So I kind of agree with you. Now, as I was saying at the start, again, with a lot of these things, you know, you're careful how you're discussing it because you don't want people to hear what you ain't see, because you're not saying that someone who is in that position and does abuse someone is good or right for doing it. But you must understand, as the old people say, if you lie with the dogs, you don't be surprised when you get the fleas. So there are certain kind of people that have certain kind of behavior. I remember as a younger person talking to some young ladies, etc., and they were talking about some guys that they like, and some of them were in certain kind of lifestyles. And I remember making the point that bad men do have exes, you know. And I'm not saying that the guy in the range was necessarily a bad man or anything like that. I'm not casting any aspersions on this guy. I'm talking in general, in the vacuum. Bad men don't really have exes. You don't go with a bad man and then you leave him when you decide and go on to the next guy. That doesn't happen.
Because and people forget at a very basic level, pride and ego. And those things can cause some, especially when you spend a number of years crafting this image of who you are.
Yeah. I remember in Trinidad and Tobago, there was a story, and the guy got away with it apparently, where a very well-known, politically connected, very wealthy doctor allegedly hired a hitman to take out his wife. That story always sits with me, you know, because the hitman was arrested for murder. The hitman said, that man hired me to kill that woman. They leave the hitman in prison for murder, but somehow the hirer got away.
It's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
Yeah, and how much money you have. But that's to your point, and that's not an unheard of thing at those kind of levels. You mess with some of those guys, and yeah, that guy is horning you every day of your life, and it hurts, yes. But he can't take the honor. And yes, some women say that as an insult to men and their fragile masculinity. He goes, oh, fragile masculinity. Okay, you could call it fragile if you want, but that fragile masculinity could come crashing down on you as a hammer and destroy everything.
And that's my point, because men are very egotistical, very territorial, and they believe that their wives and their girlfriend belongs to them. And anything other is considered a violation. That requires an instant and a very permanent response, because men and women interpret things differently. We are not saying domestic violence is an acceptable thing. We are talking about different in terms of perspective. Women tend to gossip. Women, I'm not speaking in a disrespectful manner. Women tend to carry stories, and they tend to play the long game and try to find soft, gentle ways to hurt you over a long period of time. Men response are instant and appropriate.
Yeah. You know, room the old wives tale about grinding glass and different things and putting it in your food and stuff. Men can't do that, you know. That's a thing only women could envision. It. Can you imagine as a man, you're going to bed with somebody you hate, smiling, kissing, telling them I love you every night for 5 years, waiting for them to die, or in some cases for a whole decade. You hate this man for a decade and slowly killing him. A man not able to, if I hate you, we had to do something about that right now. But there's a difference in that's the evolutionary psychology way that they talk about it between the males and females in men and women in humans, and they also talk about it, for example, in some bonobos. I'm not saying we came from apes, but there are similarities in behavioral constructs among the genders where the men are better peacemakers and the women are better peacekeepers. So because the women don't want to explode into anything at any moment, they are always trying to keep the peace, keep things peaceful. The men don't mind exploding, so they explode, get rid of that rage. If somebody dies or something like that, well, we deal with that after, and after that we well and make up. You know how many men are friends with somebody they fought with at some point in time? We fight and then that was it. That was that. We're good now. You know how many women are enemies with their friends?
Where's Ria?
This isn't an insult, though, Ronnie. I don't mean that as an insult. This is beneficial. So, for example, in bonobos, which is a type of ape, because of that, in groups, when there are multiple females around, females lead the troop of bonobos because they are better at cooperating and peacekeeping. So in some cases, women, that peacekeeping ability of women to not blow off the handle is actually a beneficial thing. So it's not an insult. But let me hear what you're saying there, Annie.
Good night.
Good night.
I was not going to talk about what women do and
no, you don't have to talk about that.
Do and all them thing. I was just going to touch on the actual story that you was talking about with this man. And at first, when I watched the video, of course, I was like, in my feelings because I was a woman, and I was like very disappointed.
That was not anything I see.
Are wrong, right? Especially the men that were wrong. But the more I thought about it, the more I understood why they stood off and didn't do anything. Because at the end of the day, when the night reached, and so write a like $5,000 check for the woman, them on the outskirts, you know, and then they'll get treated bad, and she might say, you know, your friend tell me to leave here, your friend tell me to leave it. So I just understand why men and why people just stay out of man and woman business, right? Look, a few years ago, I don't know if you remember this, the Rasta man who does with Maxi, drive Maxi on the bus route, who went in the bar and hit the woman with a piece of chair. You remember that story? Do you remember that video?
Yes.
Right. And the police and them would have arrested the man, and the woman was bringing lunch in the station for the man. You understand? So sometimes it is better to just stay out of these people and them drama.
Yeah.
Stay out from it.
I know of a first-hand situation where a young lady she went and find the man where the man is. The man didn't come and put himself in their situation. She went and find the man, ask him about his advice about another guy that she was interested in. The guy's a bit of a player, and the two guys know each other. She asked him about advice about it. The guy with his good self, you know, he said, well, you know, and you had to be careful about XYZ. And you know what the young lady did? Went back and told the other guy.
Yep.
You and I saw people talking about that, and you know, for me, my way to try to avoid some of those things, well, look who. I thought you were sleeping.
Oh,
say good night, folks.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, to me, one of the best ways to avoid that is just to stay away from men like that. I don't want to be in the employ of a man like that. if that's how I know he operates, I don't want to be an employee of his. But if you, yes, tell him good night. But if you are already, let me just finish this one. But if you are already an employee of his, he is already paying your salary.
Exactly.
You are going to get involved in that when you don't even know if the woman would press charges on the man. You get involved there, and next thing, because men understand this, between men there's always that threat of physical violence. You get involved there, and that man could turn on you. Remember, he was speaking allegedly about an alleged licensed firearm. Do you want to get involved? Imagine now, you are there playing best savior and protector, end up dead, your wife and children fatherless, and this woman
intervene and try to help the damsel in distress.
Correct.
Right? And create that superhero complex. And that is what I'm talking about. Whether we agree or from a moral standpoint or ethical standpoint, we need to understand the circumstances of that situation. And so that is why the guys and them was coming at him with reason. Boy, go home and deal with that. They wasn't saying, don't deal with it, you know. They only was saying, come out the public domain, let you go home where your reputation will not be tarnished and you can deal with it accordingly. And
listen, these things are not as scarce as some people like to think, even in the upper echelons of society. Here are some to remember. A former attorney general who is very skilled at getting cases against the state right now. There were allegations, front page of the papers, that he was in a bit of abusive something with his wife, and she was running from here to there trying to get her. Because I am plagued with the curse, as it were, of good memory. I always remember these things, and I'm talking about these things sometimes, and people are blank. They don't remember. Those allegations were front page of the papers. But back then, no one taped it over a wall, so you couldn't tell. There was another guy inside of the partnership who was a well-known and well-established guy in the Hindu community. A pundit who was related to many high-level pundits. And he was beating his outside woman who was arguing with him about how he was treating his second outside woman in Grand Bazaar car park.
I remember that one.
Is he in jail? Is he in prison?
In these matters, right? In these matters, unless the person press charges, there's nothing anybody can do about it. Right? Until he hit the woman and she fall on, but she had and die, bleed out, then the police can't really do anything.
You know, I was wondering, Rani, I saw the strong police on the strong TV police was saying that the police are supposed to go down there and remove his license, firearm, etc., etc. And I was wondering legally if that is even possible. Because
if he's threatening to kill somebody with it, then yes.
On what evidence are you going to go with it and say he was threatening to kill somebody?
I didn't watch the whole video. I watched it.
No. I am saying even listen what I'm saying, Rani. I'm saying even if you heard the man that looked like him say that on a video on social media, grainy, taped over a wall in the dark, do you think you could make a legal case to take his firearm off of that video?
It can be done, but it would be very difficult, especially with the level of policing that we have here, and the justice system, because they would have to now prove that they would have to get the first-hand person who actually recorded to say, yes, I recorded, and that this was the person.
Exactly. There, you can't do that off of the video. You aren't going to be able to do that off of the video. You're going to have to get a human. You're going to have to get a human to tell you, I heard that, and I am willing to be a witness of that. Which one of the humans involved there do you think is going to jump at that opportunity? I don't think man over the wall is going to do that, you know, because you notice you have no idea who the identity of that person was. the person sent it to those social media pages. They didn't go viral off of their own page.
Yep, that's correct.
They already have razor wire on top of their wall. That is a person already concerned about their security. You think they're going to pick up themselves and go and put themselves in other people's business to be a witness in a case like that against a very wealthy man who very likely wealth means very likely you're powerful and connected, and evidently he has access apparently to legal firearms. You want to get in that? And the man had 2 workers walking with him, watching him, apparently, allegedly, beat up a woman there. And those 2 workers did nothing. So he has people in his employ who would be okay with him taking measures outside of the law. You want to be the one to go and be the witness? You're sure the 2 guys who were with him not going to be a witness? You're sure the female who jumped out of the back seat not going to be a witness? I don't know, but I'm not sure that the woman who was involved and the alleged victim, I'm not sure even she would be a witness. So, how are you doing that?
She willing to press charges because that's gonna be the start. I doubt. Like, listen, the man get caught in the middle of the road abusing this woman. That is not the first time this man abused this woman. The first time he get caught is never the first time he do something. And if it's the first time he do it and he get caught, well, it's real terrible. But the first time he get caught does never be the first time that he do something. In most instances.
It doesn't seem like the first time because he doesn't seem extremely apprehensive about doing it and all of that. But that's just the thing. How are you going to do something about that? Like, I saw Richie Rich was saying earlier on, if this was in the States, his business would have been collapsing. And I don't even know if that's true. Bill Gates was found to have flown multiple times, something nearly like 30 times at least, to a pedo island on a pedo plane. Best friends with a pedo guy. And the PC is still making him billions of dollars.
You saying that? You're supposed anyway, let me not say that.
No, that's not alleged.
I don't
That's not alleged. That one is not alleged. I don't need to say alleged about that one. You don't need to say alleged about that. The flight records have been released. The name of the plane was Lolita Airlines. I wouldn't tell you to go search out what Lolita means before the FBI comes looking for you. But let's suffice it to say it has a meaning that leans toward exactly what you would think. And he was going to an island that they now know that they have shut down for the cause of it being a home base for trafficking of minors. He was going along with a man who was known since then and who is now known for sure to have been a global procurer of that kind of nastiness. What happened to him? Anything happened to him?
Nothing as well.
No. As Donald Trump said, and some people misquote what he said, but he was right in what he said. The Hollywood tapes that were released in 2016 when he was first going up for election, and he made the statement about grab them by the kitty cat. And many people are still up in arms about that. But if you listen to the full statement he was saying, he was making a point. He said, when you're rich and powerful, that was the start, they allow you to do it. You could walk up to a woman and grab them and nothing would come of it. Was he wrong?
No, of course not. I listened to it. I listened to the whole thing. I felt up defend it because people don't want to know, and some people already make up their mind on what it is. So you just leave it like that.
Yep.
You see, what I've come to realize, though, a lot of people don't like to face the truth. But they will sensationalize certain phrases and not listen to the entire context. Because there's a reason why Donald Trump became the 45th or the 46th president of the United States.
I think he was 45th.
45th president of the United States. Because he was resonating with all the hillbillies, the people who have felt left behind, the whole PC culture. He was able to say things that people has been yearning to say for a pretty long time.
Yep.
And Donald Trump is so corrupt that even when he asks him question about the tax code, I'm going to do it because that's what the code is for. And
That's not corruption.
no, but I'm saying that he was saying things that people will normally say in dark rooms.
Yep.
He was saying it even now in the presidential and in Republican presidential debate, because just looking at it, and the persons who associate themselves most with Trump is the person who are going forth as front runners.
Yep. Correct.
To show you how just by associating yourself with this man, it's almost like a god complex that they have around Donald Trump, because people has been waiting to let themselves free for far too long.
And it was some of that resonation with Trump. There were some things that I noticed. For example, he called Rosie O'Donnell horseface. And the media was up in arms. How dare he, a presidential candidate, has called a celebrity horseface. And they asked him about it in the debates. What do you think about calling women and using terms like horseface and what? And he said, I didn't call women horseface, only Rosie O'Donnell. And they thought that was going to sink him. But for the average person, for the person who is working too many hours in the day and making too little money, and all they are looking for is some entertainment, and they find that these elite Hollywood creeps are just trying to run everything and carry things in their way. I don't know if you all heard this new song, a guy named Oliver Anthony singing about rich men north of Northman, or north of
Richmond.
Richmond, right? Richmond, north of Richmond, correct. And that's the kind of sentiment that these wealthy people want to come and just tell us how to live our lives. We okay with calling people horseface? If they are horseface, they are horseface, and yes, that's how it works in the normal world. He ate a steak and poured ketchup on it. That's one of my favorite examples. And the media went off. Look at him, that uncultured man who puts ketchup on steak. Poor people do. People who can't afford the prime steaks, and they just burn down the steak as good as they could, and they slap a lot of ketchup on it to kind of mask some of the not too top taste. They do. And they aren't offended by seeing a leader put ketchup. That's the kind of thing that rallied him. Your thoughts on BRICS? Wow, as you bring that up, BRICS have some news today. United Arab Emirates. Is it Iran? Quite a few. Argentina. A whole list of them. I was reading it today. And now they control the vast majority of the world's oil production. 30% of the global GDP is under BRICS. That's some scary stuff. But we bear in mind Trinidad and Tobago isn't badly placed, because remember, we were the first Caribbean country to jump onto the Belt and Road Initiative. We just day before yesterday, the Chinese ambassador was meeting with our Minister of Social Development, and they were talking and etc, etc, etc. So we are actually not that badly placed with China, and we don't usually insult China that much. So we aren't in a bad place with China also. And to me, I think Trinidad, we need to balance on that edge. I don't think we could jump into BRICS, because we are too close in the sphere of the United States to do that effectively, I think.
I agree with that analysis, because we are right in the United States backyard, and this is considered the Western Hemisphere, while all those places that and our population and our manufacturing power is not as high as Brazil and China and all those kind of things. So we have to
Thank you, Jim King.
Take advantage of these two opportunities that fighting for market share, and use it to the best of our abilities.
Yep. I agree. I don't want, like, I remember people were kind of upset when the Venezuelan election business was going on and Trinidad was kind of hands off. I like that approach. Don't get too much involved in other people's. Listen. We are the cockroach in the foul party. Let we dance with cockroach dance in the corner and leave the fowls and them to mess up the middle. We good in we corner, holding our corner. And it could be insulting to think about it that way. And why should we? Okay, you could want that if you want. But bear in mind, the reality of the world is as such that if you're a small lion and there's a big lion there, it might be unfair that he has the pride under his control. But you run up to him and try and take it over and you will die. It's like some of the people who talk about slavery and they don't understand that there are ways to get out of slavery that work and there are ways to get out of slavery that don't. The violent revolt on slavery almost never works. Yes, it seems emotionally satisfying, but like, think about it. If biologically, like, let's leave it at a biological level. The human being biologically, your purpose is to carry on your genetics into the next generation. If you do something that just murders everyone and your entire family and everything ends right there, okay, they may build statues for you at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean after you dove off the edge of the boat. You won't being enslaved, you dove off, but your lineage ends there. My foreparents who took the licks and went through some other methods, I'm here. So, in the grand scheme, biologically, we're talking here, who succeeded? So, as Trinidad and Tobago, we have to think in that context, I think. Yes, it's unfair that we have to ask the United States to go and do the dragon deal with Venezuela, but that's reality. It's unfair that we can't just jump into BRICS just so because the US would penalize us, but that's reality. So I say balance. We're friends with everybody. Trinis love everybody. Everybody could come in Trini, and we're a neutral place. You all want to have a convention and just talk things out? Come to Trinidad. We offer our shores for such things. We have enough violence. We don't need any international violence. All our violence is national and internal. We don't need anyone anymore on the outside.
I believe our policy should honestly be a system policy, a mutual place to do business, a neutral place to do opportunity, because there's a saying in the greater world in the United States. Give to Caesars what is Caesars. And we don't have the military power to back our allegiances. Because people in this generation, we call it the social media generation, feel when it comes to geopolitics, you can say things and don't have the military power to back it up, and you have the God-given right to do it. Not in geopolitics. Geopolitics, you must have the military and the will to defend your alliances as well as the strategy and the decision.
Correct.
And I want people in, because a lot of people in Trinidad, they're going to jump on the bandwagon and say in BRICS and the government should join BRICS, and even some foolish politician will come with some foolish revolutionary statement and they're saying something new without understanding the geopolitics and our position on the global scale.
Yes.
As well as the little 2x4 army force we have from there.
You had to know your power levels. You have to know if I could fight in the heavyweight or if I need to stick to the featherweight. Listen, if you're a little tiny guy, you don't see the big strong ones, and it's just not wisdom. It's just not. And you see what you say in their room. Sometimes our politicians annoy me with that. I remember when some of our politicians were trying to get us sanctioned by the US, and I'm like, are these people crazy? What is going on here? Why would you do something like that? Why would you be trying to sanction your country? You hate us that much? Do you just hate our people that much? I see someone talking about Africa there, and Africa is having some real stirrings because Niger, I believe, had a coup recently, but Nigeria, which neighbors Niger, is promising with the ESCO, however, the Western African nations, they have an alliance there, and they are US backed. They're promising to invade Niger to depose the militant leader and replace the rightful democratic leader. But Mali, which neighbors Niger and also neighbors Nigeria, is saying we support that military takeover in Niger, and if you attempt to interfere in Niger's business, we are going to raid Abuja, the capital of Nigeria. And here's the problem in Africa, that plenty of people who look at Africa from the outset, you look at the Europeanized version of Africa, and you could not understand this. Original Africa didn't have Nigeria and Mali and Benin and Niger and the Ivory Coast as countries. They were tribes. The countries, that country border business was a European established thing. So even within Nigeria, there are some tribal members who belong to tribal majorities that are inside of Niger. I was doing some reading on some of the politics there. So some of those countries are always teeter-tottering on instability. Many of those African countries don't fully control all of their landmass inside of their geographical area. They are parts controlled by militant tribal leaders. So Nigeria play fast, rushing to Niger. This Mali army rushes into Nigeria, but Nigeria is massive. They may not be able to take over Nigeria, but what they're promising to do is attack their capital. And if they attack their capital, very likely what that would do is cause instability throughout Nigeria. So some of those tribal leaders who are already thinking about revolution or rebellion because they didn't like the fact that the Igbo tribe is on top in Nigeria, they want their tribe, there is that kind of bacchanal. You think you watching Nigerian and think all of them are African, and then you think all of them are Nigerian, and they could tell the nuanced difference between their tribes, and they hold on seriously to those things. So that could be a powder keg waiting to happen there.
And also Burkina Faso is threatened is not threatened, but it's also aligned with Niger.
Mm-hmm.
And my thing with this whole thing is, it's with Africa, it's that they have a population as well as the natural resources to chart their own future.
Correct.
And so they could make whatever decisions because all wealth comes from Africa. And let me rephrase, almost 90 to 80% of the world wealth or the world developmental wealth in terms of
resources,
uranium, gold and copper and zinc and all those kind of things come from Africa. So Africa has certain bargaining powers that the developed world or the West or even China and Russia want. So they may not have the military competence, but they have the natural resources, and now they are starting to develop the know-how. So Africa is in a very unique place to chart itself on the world stage over the next 50 to 20 years thereabouts.
The issue with that is, as long as you are warring, it makes it difficult to do those things. Africa has the benefit of having a very youthful population. A serious cross-continent war could damage that significantly because it's the youths that die in war. And the thing with warring is it nearly always encourages outside assistance. You see, if I am Nigeria and I want my political influence to continue with my neighbor Niger, I don't want this rebel leader to take over Niger. I want my political influence there. But it's going to be difficult for me to do it by myself. And the US is willing to help me. Do I refuse the US assistance? Okay. I refuse the US assistance, I start. And then the alliance between Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, they start pressing back and they tap into some Russian help because they're saying, well, we can't really push back against the ECOWAS good enough. So we have to get some outside help too. So they bring in the Russia. And that's what's been happening in Africa for a very long time now. A lot of the slaves in Africa that were traded, the Africans sold themselves to buy weapons to fight themselves. That's what happened with a lot of it. Two of the wealthiest men that ever touched Africa, Mansa Musa and Tippy Tip or something the other guy was named. One from West Africa, one from East Africa. Both of them notorious slavers. Probably the number one and number two people that sold the most slaves ever in the human history. Both black men. Black African men without European overlords. There was no hidden secret European plan where it was actually the king of Belgium or actually the king of France was actually... No, they were doing it on their own. They were independently wealthy, making decisions, making political maneuvers all on their own, doing those things. Like, that's some of the things that makes it difficult for Africa to get the best of its own wealth. And obviously, the outsiders are just looking and rubbing their hands with all of this. They would, in fact, you know how the CIA goes. They may encourage a coup here or there just to increase the instability because they know they abound in the instability. Trini Hotep says it's like America and Russia are doing Cold War games and using Africa as the battleground. History repeats itself. Did Nigeria strike oil wealth twice in the last 20 years? Yes, Nigeria is a very wealthy country on oil. But you see, the thing with oil, the Arabs, because they are authoritarian, because they're basically a monarchy, they could manipulate and use their oil wealth in a unique way. But if you are a democratic country, finding oil wealth means that you need to invite someone, generally speaking, to come and maximize that wealth for you. So Guyana has found oil wealth. They are doing much better for it. But probably the vast majority of the wealth from that oil is leaving the shores of Guyana. It's just the reality.
Yes. Of course, and they was doing did their whole thing, and they basically giving it to China by the bucket. Well, I mean, by the barrels. I don't know. You're just scooping it out the ground and giving it to China. Either way you take it, China is basically taken over Guyana.
But Ariel, I am not saying good night Central Chow Master. Ariel, I'm not saying that Guyana is misusing their wealth, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying the fact remains that it's not a Guyanese company. Like in Saudi Arabia, the companies that are taking the oil out and selling it are monarch companies. They are owned by the royal family. It's like if if Dr. Rowley was the king of Trinidad and Tobago, and the companies bringing the oil out and selling it are owned by him and his family. That's a different situation than Guyana. Guyana, it isn't even a state-run company doing it. Is it Exxon? I believe it's ExxonMobil is the main one in Guyana. That's not a Guyanese company. They make their money by getting the taxes off of Exxon. Do you think Exxon pays more than 50% of their profit in taxes?
No, of course not.
So, the majority of the wealth from the oil is leaving. And that's beside the fact that many of the highest paid people inside of that oil sector would not be native Guyanese also. Many of the highest paid contractors inside of that oil sector may not be Guyanese also. And that's just the way it goes with some of those things. We need the ability to extract and process our own oil. Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
Because we need our own oil. Before we have the ability to extract and process, we need to find our own oil.
Correct.
Listen, Tobago have real oil, okay? You can get the oil from there.
Or your partner, you tell it that out.
That is what they say. That is what they say. But excuse me, I have a real problem with people talking this Europeans and Africa vibes, right? I don't like it. And I hate that this new movement happening where it's like, oh, kill out all the white people in Africa, run out all the white people in Africa.
That's not a new movement, eh? You mean
know,
kill the boy? Ha! Bra, bra! Kill the boy! Ha! That's the chant. You never see the chant?
Yeah,
It's a political chant in South Africa.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I don't like that movement because
Neither me.
look at this country. Is it Zimbabwe? Was it Zimbabwe?
Yes, with Mugabe, with the $1 million notes.
White people. And then, boom, inflation hit them like MF. And it's because you don't pay attention or you don't think about the future of your own situation. You will cause your own downfall, like plenty of these African nations have done in the past by infighting and by obviously the trading of each other through slavery and whatever. All of these things happen, and it is not the fault of Europeans. Like, okay, fine, good. The Europeans bought slaves, but who sold them though? Fine, cool. Europeans use slaves. That's cool, but didn't Africans have slaves too?
Yes.
I'm confused.
Yes. Slavery is a human constant. Slavery is a human common thing. Fun fact, if Elon Musk became a US president, he'd be the first African president. Ha ha ha. Well, technically, Obama was half Kenyan, so he was half African too. And Elon Musk cannot become president because he wasn't born in the United States. He was born in South Africa. And Zimbabwe did some of that. You know, I was reading, I follow a couple Africans from Africa to get some news more, you know, from the source and stuff, and looking at some of the discussions there, you get a better inner working of it. And I was listening to an African lady describing some of these movements that want to reclaim the farms and repatriate the farms from the white farmers back to the Africans. And they were talking about it in relation to Africa and even in relation to like the United States, where they talk about the United States is on stolen land and this belonged to the Indians, etc. Which is a mad thing because the Indians were raiding the land from each other. The natives, not the Indians. The natives were raiding the land from each other even before that too. But either way, you understand where it's coming from. But the point that she was making is that when many of these African nations talk the anti-white rhetoric of taking back the farms from the white farmers because the white farmers stole the land from them, you have to understand that the white farmers didn't steal farms. Oftentimes they came to unprepared land, created farms that are now running sometimes for generations. Anyone who knows anything about farming knows that's not necessarily the easiest thing to do. So, when you come, you are not trying to get back your land. Actually, what you are trying to get is the added labor that somebody else put into the land. If you're being honest, that's what you want. Second to that, if you just take it back from the people who learned this skill and perfected this skill over generations on how to bring crops on this semi-arable land, and you just take it back from them because it's you, can you run the farms? The answer is no. The farms crash, as happened in Zimbabwe. Mugabe came in and he said, well, African farms are for African people. Take the farms from the white people. In Kenya, they kicked out the Indians at one point in time. There was a significant Indian diaspora inside of Kenya, believe it or not. In Kenya, and they were doing what many Indians do when they go to many other countries. A lot of the business community was Indian owned, and certain leaders came in there and they're like, the Indians taking over everything, kick them out, and the economy. And what would you know? Invite them back. Please come back. Those things don't work like that. White leather says conquered, not stolen. Facts. But you know, conquest is a technical thing. Brandon says, next fun fact, Africa is actually a prosperous nation. The media doesn't promote it that way. Africa is not a nation though. Africa is a continent. So there are prosperous nations in Africa. If that's what the point you're trying to make, yes, there are prosperous nations in Africa. Even in the poorest nations of Africa, there are prosperous areas in those nations. That's a fact. But that doesn't deny or negate the fact that there's a significant level of poverty and a high level of mismanagement. And as I've heard, to go back to the tribal point, as I've heard some people establish, part of the reason there's so much instability in Africa is because you're assuming that these are nations, while many of the times they're tribes. So in order for you to maintain peace, it's a juggling act where, remember, the guy that came to Trinidad was a chief. He is not the president of Ghana. He's not the prime minister of Ghana, but he's the chief of a tribal group in Ghana. You think he doesn't have sway over his group? So even if you're the president or prime minister of that country and you need to get something done, you have to go and discuss it with him. You can't just send the police, because if the police belong to his tribe. Yeah, Hotep, you're going to say something there, bro? You gone? Or you're getting a little technical difficulties? I think right now Ghana planting so much soy to feed vegans.
Is she not talking? Is she not talking?
Who, Ronnie?
Yeah, I thought she was speaking.
Nah.
I know she wanted to talk, but here's the thing. That's the truth, right? And I think he's the Ashanti king, actually.
Right, king.
He's
not chief. Not chief, king.
But
Very
we have
good.
to understand that in that particular case, the Ashanti was an actual kingdom in Africa, actual empire at one point in time as well. So they hold on to that ceremonial tribal sort of kingdom state.
Many other tribes will also.
I know. There is a Southern African kingdom that sits smack dab right in I think close to the border of South Africa. Actually, it's an actual place. It's an actual official kingdom. So yeah, Africa is in the unique predicament of that. Now I have my little sways, you know what I'm saying? I want the self-determination of Africa.
Yeah.
I don't really care. Like, here's the thing. I believe Africans have to really look at their particular history. As I was talking to people today, I'm like, listen, enslavement and the slave trade is entrenched in African history. There's many things entrenched in African history, actually, and Africa was always known way before there was a transatlantic slave trade, Arab slave trade. Africans had the unique position of trading with many different groups outside of Africa as well as inside of it. So I think if Africa is to get a place of some sort of dominance, then
Europe, Ronnie, Europe.
They go have to do some trade with people they don't like, and here's the thing for me is they need to stop looking at it as bad to trade with people. Please, your ancestors were trading with people long before they seek to rub their hands and do evil machinations of coming to the shores and taking it over for themselves. So now them things don't go on. So since those things don't go on, nobody trying to put in the bottom of ships anymore and take the thing underneath your foot. Really and truly, they're doing it other ways. You need to, flex your diplomacy skills. Africans and the diplomacy skills would like to flex as much.
Hotep, I was one of the African content creators I like to listen to. I believe I spoke about her before. What's her name? Margot or something. Margott or something like that. Very intelligent woman, an entrepreneur woman. She's doing some entrepreneur business in, I can't remember which African country, some one of those African countries. And the point that she was making, that same trading point, she said that a lot of African nations now bought into the leftward swing of the 20th century, and a lot of them increased the bureaucracy and the red tape, like Trinidad and Tobago, where trading and business became difficult. And she was saying that Africa, the tribes in Africa, they always knew trade. Africa is the cradle of civilization. There was never a point in time where the main African civilizations didn't know that there were other civilizations out there. They always knew that because they were there from the start. So it wasn't a surprise that there were other people out there. The Silk Road trade routes, some of the oldest trade routes in the world, start in Africa, obviously, because that's where humans began. So it's trade isn't a strange thing for Africans. Some of those trade routes, some of the trades that they do, they're familiar from eons ago. It's just some of the bureaucracy that came in made it a bit more difficult, and some of the Europeanization made it a bit more difficult too. And there are some, to me, I think there are some difficult questions that need answering, and maybe even some difficult changes that may need to happen. Like you see some of those African nations over time splitting up and splitting into a east and a west and a north and a south, and maybe some of those African nations need to understand that the Europeanized forced democracy over a massive landmass calling all of us a nation isn't conducive for us functioning. That might be the case. Instead of you having a roller coaster ride of cool peace as each tribe tries to take over the entire piece, let each tribe keep their tribe on their own and trade as they used to.
Yeah, I think no. I somewhat agree because I do follow some pages that talk about some Pan-African pages on Twitter that talk about this thing. They say how they want something sort of a federalized sort of Africa, right? So there should be sort of like nation states or tribal states, and they all have representatives on the same African Union that is there. That seems to not be working, by the way, because the African Union tends to be very corrupt. Jesus Christ, the bureaucracy is ridiculous. But I think yes, I think at some point in time, because even though yes, tribalism has been there for quite some time in the midst of Africa, right? It's sort of there, but at least the tribes that are in close proximity with one another knew how to trade with one another and barter with one another enough to know self-interest among groups, right? So the person was saying, listen, why not dismantle this border thing, dismantle this sort of thing, and let the Africans make their own nation states, and let them have representatives upon a union, an actual proper union where they could do some self-interest and trade, where Africa could actually do some self-determination and actually plot their course. You understand what I'm saying? With obviously trading with other people outside of the country, outside of the continent actually. So I don't see that as a bad idea, right? It's just how the logistics gotta look for NATO, because let's be real about this too, because the thing about it is this is 6,000 ethnic groups creating their own nation state seems to be a very tricky thing to do as well.
Yes.
And how the tribe going to reclaim land that they believe is theirs is also going to be a problem.
Yes. And that's one of the difficulties with Africa versus like Europe. For Europe, they had a good bit of separation. So some of their tribes were allowed to become a country. The country is a tribal group to an extent. So they don't have the in-bickering as much. And I understand what you're saying, Ariel. I think that may be complicated in places like Congo, where not all, but a vast majority of the resources are. And that's true. If you look at the history of Africa, a lot of it has been the coast taking advantage of the insides of the inland, the Congo basin. That has been a lot of it, yes. But to me, I rather the conversations and disagreements be clear, instead of you have people forced to be inside of the same nation and they're still fighting for the land and resources for their tribes, because they are still doing that, and those tribes still know who their tribal members are. They still intermarry only within their tribe. They still look at this tribe as an enemy and this tribe as an ally. To me, I think those things should be on the surface, instead of trying to mask it with this fake nation stuff. And what the nation stuff very often does, the facade of democracy, very often what it actually does, is it allows outside influence to get in there. Because sometimes those leaders over the wider nation are actually puppetish. They're put in there by Europeans or the US or some outside force.
You think they're puppetish?
we're not trying to fully call anybody anything, but you know, some of them are a bit puppetish. And what you effectively do there is you recolonize Africa. You still have that European US influence because those guys must go to all of the international conventions, etc., and etc., and etc., and they still impose that law over the entirety of 10 tribes in this nation. Instead of, let's be honest about what this nation is. This isn't a nation. We are 10 tribes being forced to interact like this. So let's be our tribes and have the interactions in public. If we're warring because the warring is going on. Nearly all African nations have some kind of internal conflict going on, you know. Do you know how many internal conflicts there are going on regularly in Africa? Constantly. This region fighting with this region, this tribe is still fighting with this tribe is still fighting with this tribe. So let's put it on the surface. These are the actual groups here. These are the individual groups. Let's not mama guy ourselves. And I think you could actually get better relationships out of that. Even with the Congo, where a lot of the resources are, the Congo might have the physical resources, but they may not have the manpower. So yes, you still have trade. You still have trade open. Cordell, by the way, Trinidad does have some level. To me, I think Trinidad has more underemployment than unemployment. When people talk about the unemployment in Trinidad and Tobago, I like to ask them, show me the people that are so unemployed. Show me how many people in Trinidad want a job and cannot find a job. Not that they want a specific kind of job and they can't get that specific kind of job, but they want a job and cannot get it. In Trinidad and Tobago, are you sure? Because if so, let them message me. I'll send them the recruitment for a lot of places looking for workers constantly. So I don't actually believe that unemployment thing is at the level some people like to tout it. Also, the reality is relative poverty, the way many people check poverty with relative poverty, is there would always be poverty because it's like the poorest 10% of people in your country, they would always consider them living in poverty, as it were. But they aren't actually in poverty. I don't think... in fact, we went through this when our Miss World went where she went and said that we have people in poverty and squalor. We went through the facts. There aren't many people in Trinidad living under the global poverty line. That's not true. Who in Trinidad is starving for food? For food. Because they cannot get any. Who? And they can't get a food card? Like that's not really true in Trinidad.
I think to be honest, if we look at America, some Americans, listen, I saw some videos, man, of Philadelphia, of California. If people want to talk about people that can't eat her food, go to Skid Row, go to San Diego, go to the inner cities of Philadelphia. There's people on the roads right now, poor, homeless, and they look like they're about to die, unfortunately.
A lot of that is drugs, though, eh?
And that's true. And America is known for bountiful abundance. And Trinidad is known for less opportunities, and I have yet to see that sort of squalor in Trinidad and Tobago. So that's relatively true. I've never heard somebody in Trinidad and Tobago really going without food. Now, sure, I lived in certain communities that obviously were low economic, right? And they had to.
I don't deny that at all.
No, they had to rub 2 pennies together to eat, but at least they eat. They rub you 2 pennies together and they eat. Mm-hmm. You know,
I won't deny there are people who are not rich. There are people who are relatively poor to the country. There are people who can't afford a lot of the things that they want. There are people who maybe affording internet is out of their reach. An internet bill every month is out of their reach. There are some like that. There was a young lady who was electrocuted last week. and they're living in a community in Point or something like that, and the community is an unregulated community where they're stealing electricity behind one of those industrial buildings. I can't remember whose it is exactly, and she got electrocuted because they were stealing electricity like that, etc. And that's some of that is poverty in the way that you can't afford exactly the situation that you want, and especially if you're talking about affording living situations like a house. Well, yeah, some people poor if you're talking about affording a... I might be poor if you're talking about affording a house in Trinidad and Tobago. But when you're talking about like the necessities to stay alive, that's not really true in Trinidad and Tobago. Like, if you're being honest, it's not. It's similar in the United States. You were talking about the squalor in some of those inner cities, and a lot of that is more because of drugs. Because in the United States, what you generally find is, when you look among the poor, you generally find more obesity. The poor people are fat. Now, this isn't necessarily a knock on them, because sometimes it's because they're eating unhealthy food, but nonetheless, they're having a surplus of calories. They're eating more calories than their body is burning. And they're poor.
Because Big Mac is $1. Right? I could get 2 Big Mac and that'll carry me through my day. Or I don't know, my lunch. And then for dinner I'll have something else.
McDonald's in this country, that's crazy.
Well, we can't afford McDonald's here, but over there McDonald's is cheap. It's very cheap.
Yeah, fast food in general.
Not really, like the healthier options aren't really that cheap. Like Subway is kind of expensive on you know. You
consider Subway healthy?
Well, it's not salad.
Like,
it's not expensive. It's the same price.
And you know, I understand what people say when they say healthy eating is expensive, but I don't totally agree, you know. I don't totally agree. Here's what I think. I think when people talk about healthy eating being expensive, they're talking about designer healthy eating. They're not talking about just healthy eating. They want imported kale and a kiwi something, and quinoa and a special rye bread and a vegan this and a gluten-free that. That's what they're talking about when they're talking eating healthy. They're not talking about eating cassava and pumpkin for a meal, because that's a healthy meal. Exactly, Ronnie. Exactly. That's why eating healthy is expensive, because people aren't accustomed eating healthy, and the things that are actually healthy, many people say that's gross. No one is going to eat a geed. How you want me eat that? You want me dead or what? You want me dead or what? I want avocado toast with gluten-free cappuccino, please.
Well, Nathan, you have to understand. Well, Nathan, you have to understand, right? It's also sort of wrapped around consumerism to a certain degree as well, right?
Yes.
Like people want to eat healthy, but they want to eat healthier in style. It must look a certain way. It must be appealing. Who say mushrooms don't taste good? Mushroom tastes good, but the fact that the fact that vegans want a mushroom style steak, drenched in oil, and it must cut and look on the inside like a steak. You know what I'm saying? While they add some more calories on top of the mushroom, right? Add some more calories. It's not that's how the consumerism is wrapped around healthy eating. People want organic this, and it must smell good, and it must be fresh. It must smell the 2% calories of the food. No, it's deep. Listen, I think Western people don't really want to actually go down in a yam place. They got a yam, boil the yam, then eat it just so. Western people don't want to do that.
No, that's the thing. You're not many of the times when people talk about eating healthy, they're not talking about eating healthy. You're talking about eating pretty. Listen, do you see that little girl there? She could eat anything in it. You see why I just talk about pumpkin and cassava? That's a meal. She will eat that. You ain't catching her like that. She will eat that. She loves those stuff. And you know what's the beautiful thing, Ronnie, my garden is replete with those things. So we could have pumpkin, cassava, eddos, dasheen, okra, karaili. This little girl will chew on a raw karaili if you give her it. And healthy eating becomes very cheap. But many people aren't thinking about that when they're thinking healthy eating. They're thinking about going down the vegan aisle in Massy, where everything has an additional markup, because you aren't the target audience. That's celebrity diets you're talking about. You don't really want healthy eating. You want celebrity style eating. Just before you start the room, somebody on Instagram said, "Good night, bro. How long do you think Donald is going to stay where he is presently?" Crazy mugshot. I haven't seen the mugshot. I've been here for a while. I haven't been following exactly what's going on right now down there. But I believe it was one of the right-wing commentators, Dan Bongino, I believe his name was saying that he believes Donald Trump should stay in the jail, and that might actually work. Call them on their bluff. See what they're going to do. Are they going to actually leave him in the jail there? Let the Secret Service lock down the entire jail? Because bear in mind, they're arresting him for something that nearly every other Democrat has done before. So let them do as far as they're willing to do, and I think he doesn't lose support over this. The only people that are happy over that are people who already hated him. Many of the people in the middle, the neutral people who are paying attention to the different articles, they're watching this and you're like, something isn't adding up here. Donald Trump, all of a sudden, he is the most criminal guy in the United States, and what are they charging him for? Because he questioned the elections, while Hillary Clinton for 4 years called Trump illegitimate, and he stole the elections, and the Russians gave him it. And this lady, this fat lady from Georgia, when she lost, Stacey Abrams, for a long time she was saying they cheated her. She was the rightful winner. She was calling herself the real governor. So those things, I don't know how long he's going to stay there. That I think it's all politics for that, but I don't think it's working in the favor of his opponents. I think it's working in his favor in the long run. That's the mugshot of the 47th president of America, White Leather says. He is going to make a lot of campaign donations off of that mugshot. That mugshot, as I said, is going on t-shirts. It's going on mugs. It's going on hats. The MAGA in Make America Great Again, the 2 A's would have the mugshot in it. They're going to kill that mugshot. I don't think they understood what they did when they gave him that mugshot. Yeah, that mugshot is an album cover. Here in Guyana, farmers and vendors want to cater to our new wave of expats, leaving us locals without. Farmers seem to be doing away with our traditional vegetables, which are very healthy to do. Lettuce and broccoli. Exactly, Arasoka. You're talking kind of what I'm talking about there. As I grew older, I remember asking once, what is bhaji? And as I grew older, I figured, bhaji depends on how hungry you are. Bhaji is basically grass. Do you know how many different bhajis there are? If you are from a more rural community, you get the understanding, the poorer people are, the more bhajis there are. If you understand what I mean. They go into the yard, and whatever doesn't kill is going to become bhaji. What's that?
There's pumpkin leaf bhaji, there's sweet potato leaf bhaji, there's a couple others, because I grew up in Pointswood with the old folks. But what I want to say about this idea of healthy eating to Nathan is this.
Mm-hmm.
People claim to want to eat healthy, but they only want to eat healthy to the point that they don't want to know where their food coming from and it must be prepared. Believe me, there's a cost attached to that.
Yeah. Because
eating healthy for me is going to the market and buying 20 okras for $5. You understand?
Cheddar?
Huh?
I say all leaders gather?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
I think $8 a pound for cucumber and tomato.
Okra real cheap, let Ronnie plant an okra tree in your yard. Every morning, you're getting at least one okra.
You understand? And these are the things that people don't even want to go to the market no no more because people want to stay and online and all that, and then they one day they pull back and they come directly to them. Yes, Ronnie, you are such an elite class.
The market's supposed to be dirty. The market's supposed to smell like fish. I must. When I pass the corner to the market, I must smell market. But you see, today people want to walk in GTA and walk down the vegetable aisle and see organic stuff and all these pesticide sprayed vegetables and feel they're living good. It's Westmore is living all they want to know. Or I just don't want to live Westmore.
Last Christmas there, the market goods was almost the same price as the supermarket goods. Sometimes some of it was even more expensive than if you buy it in supermarket.
Listen, and Ronnie, let me show you how healthy eating goes. I think I've told this story before. I know of a lady in my area. You know, I know the tanties. I talk to the old. I keep saying this, but I have to start a series where, you know, it's just not conversations like with important people like we've been doing, but regular people, like just like a tanty you see and have a nice conversations. They have some really interesting things. But she was talking about an interaction she had. She knew a market vendor, and the market vendor is a farmer market man, not the middleman market man. The guy plants his stuff. So she would go there, she built a relationship with him, and she would help him sell. She had 10 children or something like that. She would help him sell on a Saturday, and in payment, he would give her a bag of goods. Because he couldn't pay her cash, because he wasn't making enough cash. But for a farmer to give away a bag of extra goods, because for most farmers, goods isn't in short supply. Oftentimes for farmers, they have extras abounding. Give her some yam and cassava that just didn't finish sell off today, and you go with that. She gets more than she would have been able to afford, and he gets a worker that he would not have been able to afford. And that's how some of those things work. But when you want to exit the community and you think you could just go into Massey and make your market shopping list, that's where you get the licks. That's where you get the licks. Go befriend a farmer. Go get to know the farmers.
Tobago have farmers?
Yes. Yes, Tobago has farmers.
No, it don't.
Yes.
No, it don't.
Yes.
No, it don't.
So where does the Tobago Tadco? Where does Tadco get their produce?
Dan Tadco is like one of the Tadco does get a thing from Trinidad, I'm sure.
Ronnie, what you telling me? Tadco boasts in their videos showing you the local farms they get it from.
Nathan, those materials are nice.
So you telling me, Ronnie, there are no farms in Tobago?
I cannot say it like it's a big thing, but I know most of I just talk to the market vendors in Tobago. I just go to Tobago market because Tobago market is clean, okay? Right. Tobago market is clean, so I just go there, and plenty of them just go to Trinidad to make them the market and come over to Tobago and sell it.
Yes, I don't doubt that. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about farmers. There are farmers.
I only know of one family who farms, and they don't really do it anymore. The children, they don't want to do it. Because you know why? The children and them want to go and work in THC. So the family done. So you will more get animal farms. So like
the goat farm.
Tobago have the biggest goat farm.
Guys,
Hey, Alia, just by the way, in case you can't tell, this young lady is telling me I need to wrap up here. That's what she's trying to tell me.
That's not what she's saying at all.
That is what she's saying. That hole in the mouth there is I'm ready to sleep. Can't you see the face? That's I'm ready to sleep face. You ready to do?
Yes.
So, you all could give your closing statements here. The boss says it's closing time.
Well, I look forward to seeing Ronnie in the market and saying hi to her. Although she might see me and look me up and down because her
I wouldn't know what you look like. I wouldn't know what you look like, room. I know you wouldn't see me in the market. especially in Tunapuna market, in Port of Spain market, probably. And that Tunapuna market never one day.
Now Tunapuna again scary though, violent.
Yeah.
I don't know nothing about that, but I not entertaining that market talk. Why back? Listen, farmers, if y'all are here listening, farmers, please like create some kind of app or something so we could order your stuff directly from you, and we could probably pick it up, or you could drop it off or something like that. Because we don't want to go in the market, to be honest. Like farmers, do that for me.
There are some delivering farmers right now, just by the way.
Application. Why you want application? Why humans today want to be so sedentary? Like why this app this delivering thing for me, bro? Like get up and go.
Because it is dirty and it smells bad.
Yo,
The market
listen,
smells bad.
if nobody listen, I tell American people how Trinidad and Tobago is so Americanized, it's ridiculous. Americans have Uber everything. They deliver their food to their house, their groceries to their house. Now Trinidadians want the same thing. It's interesting, isn't it? It's super interesting the way how Trinidadians really want to move like because they want application for everything.
It's not about moving like Americans,
I don't think it's like Americans. I think it's convenience for some people.
Exactly. When I was
Convenience is born out of America. That's the point.
No. Listen. When I was a baby, young, my parents couldn't carry me market. Since I was 5, I couldn't go no market, and I refused to go market all of my life with my parents.
Yeah.
You know what my mom used to say? But when I get older, how you make your market? I say, I make my market in the supermarket. Until this day, I get to say, Mommy, look, everything in the supermarket cheaper than any market. So I win. Right? It's not about Americanized or nothing like that. I have always hated that. I don't like it. Don't tell me nothing about Charlotte shit. You see Charlotte shit, I stay up on that shit.
Listen. I was like you, Rani, to be very honest. I always used to tell my mother this market business dead. Meet me with the market bags. Meet me with the market bags on the outside, because that market kind of too dirty and people only rubbing up on me. I was a real scornful youth, to be very honest. And I didn't want to go in that market at all. But I understand the benefits of the market now. But y'all talking Charlotte Street. Y'all like robbery. Y'all like living dangerously. I am not going Charlotte Street. I am not going to Napuna Market either. Well, when there like 3 murders there for the last month or so, like Tunapuna Market could hold a burn. I real good with Shogunas Market. Shogunas Market has everything I need. It's nice and peaceful, and I mean it has the market scent. It has the market slime. The ground is always moist and wet, and it has the layer of muck on it, so you know you don't want to fall on the market floor. It has everything necessary to feel like a market, and I'm good. Hey, as I said, the youth ready to go. So you all give your closings. Anybody else?
Godspeed and see you guys next week.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Hotep, you have anything to say on the closing there, bro?
As per usual, be mindful, not mindless. You know what I'm saying?
I like that.
Keeping it always on brand, man. So yeah, shout out to everybody, and I'm saying you all need to live more bushman life instead of this urban American nonsense of applications for every single thing we do. You're about to look like them people in the movie Wall-E. You see, Wall-E's a true representation of how Western society is going. People are going to be fat and riding around in little carriers that carry them, and that's crazy, but it's true.
Good. You're finished there, Annie? Or you had something else to add?
Okay, I was just saying probably if things were a bit better in terms of not just convenience, but like the vibe of the place was better, probably people wouldn't mind going to those places. But you can't convince me that me wanting comfort is Americanized or lazy or any of those things, right? Cool. So give the boroughs or whoever, people, corporations, if all they could clean up all their markets, that would be great. And farmers, if all they could, hit them up. But it don't need to be an app if all they on TikTok here, shoot my little message and say, hey, as a farmer, I can get you some stuff and I'll be happy to, I will walk and get this stuff. Like,
But Ronnie, I'm a farmer. It's just you have to come Trinidad to get it. But
I've been Trinidad all the time.
well,
But you, Nisi get your mango yet, girl? Nisi get your mango?
it's not mango season. How you getting mango outside of mango season? What is that?
Nisi after mango long time, so.
How you getting mango outside of mango season? What is you all talking about?
You coming to take me? I come to Trinidad this weekend, so.
You could get cassava. I have cassava like rain. I have butter cassava and I have MX. Both ready.
Wow. Okay.
You could get okra. Always have okra.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Ria, the planting might be about a month, no more than a month, probably a month and a half out. But then I would have quite a bit of planting. I'd have Edos in about a week and a half or so. Listen, I like gardening, and I like eating food from my garden, and so does she. And it saves me the market run. Who needs to go to the market when I could grow it myself? All right, people. She is saying that's all we have for now. She's saying she hopes you are educated, informed, or entertained. And we'll see them tomorrow evening for 9. Yes. Bye, folks. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. And I will see you guys for the next Mindful Live. I'm your host, Nathan Springer. My co-host, Leora Springer, is saying bye. Tell them bye. Good night. And latest people, hold it on. Be well. I'm out. Peace. Laters.